Hi, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvellously well. Today what I'd like to do is talk to you about the drum mixing process. Do more of an overview. We've talked about individual elements, but I'm going to show you on this Chase song, Apricot, that I play guitar and bass on and Tim played on, and show you what we did with the drums, though, in particular, to kind of make them cut through. This song is specific because the drums don't come into the last chorus, and I have a small drum room here, so what I had to do was take the drum performance and just make it huger. Now, there's many, many different ways to do that, but I have a system where I have like a drum package of samples of kicks and snares, and I just blend them to suit. So I'm just going to show you what I do and how I do it, at least for this song. Like I say, there's lots of different ways of doing it, but this is the process on this particular song. Please subscribe. Please go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list, and you'll get a whole bunch of exclusive video content. You'll get files to download so you can practice editing, and there's lots of free songs of stuff that I've recorded with different artists that you can also hear as well. Thank you ever so much for watching, and let's have a look at this song. It's relatively straightforward. I've got a drum track, and this particular song, it doesn't come in till the end. Now, I've got a live drum kit, and with that live drum kit, I've added a whole bunch of samples here. Now, I will blend them any way I like, depending on what it is. I'll give you a description of all the different samples. I've got a warehouse kick, and this is actually a kick I recorded in a warehouse. Go figure. Let's have a listen. That's a U67 in the back of a warehouse. I had a drum kit set up in the front of the warehouse, and I had a U67 all the way in the back. So it's just kind of the ambience. I like it because it was a very bright room. They had like metal, corrugated walls, and it was a concrete floor. It's not very loud because this isn't a super rocking track, but sometimes I can push that super loud. So there you get to see kind of how I normally have it. Okay, the I Wanna kick is actually quite a popular kick. A lot of people have this sample. You'll hear it. It's, again, quite a rock kick. I use it for a little bit of extra attack. But here you can see they're mixed super, super low. The PR kick is the same thing. Just attack. The PR is only attack. The thing about the I Wanna is it has, as you can see, if I zoom in on the front, has a sort of an extended ambience, which gives, low end, which gives it sort of a bit of girth. And then the last one here is just another live recorded kick that I did. Cool. So those are all my samples that I put in. The live drums itself are very, very straightforward. It's literally just a kick, a snare. In fact, that's the live kick here. The snare is... Where is our snare? So you blend it in with all these things. Here's the live snare here. Live tom. Overheads and hats. This was recorded in my studio, so it's really, really minimal amount of mics. So just a small, tight drum kit. And that's the 64 Ludwig in there. And then, that was a quickly played, very straightforward drum part that only comes in on the outro. And then I added all these different samples here just to get different blends. As a package, quite frankly, what I will do in many circumstances is throw in all the different samples I like to use as one, laying them in one time. So if you lay in all those kicks, as a group, you can then blend afterwards. So it's, a couple of those, like the Warehouse and the I Want, are mixed really, really super low. and I'll just blend them in, and maybe during a song I might want to push, say that I want to kick because it has all the weight in the choruses just to kind of give it some girth. So I like to do that. For me, it's like if I have all those different samples available, I can push them and pull them in different areas to really show off different sections. Here's a fun one. My very good friend Dave Jordan gave these to me. And they're called S-Gun. Now that is literally a gun. It's a snare. We use it on a snare, but he went out into the desert and shot an AK-47 off and recorded it onto a DAT tape. So that's what this is. That's for real. That really happened. Okay, so there's two of those. They're two different times that he did it, and one's panned hard left and right. They're super, super low, but they're there to give it some ambience. That snare drum is the sound against the live snare of Dirt. So if you listen to Alice in Chains' Dirt, you'll hear that. That's him shooting an AK-47. Anyway. The Wonders of Rock and Roll. And then some of the other snare samples here. This one's from a band, The Gallery, that I work with. And I didn't have a transient designer. The SPL transient designer is a really, really cool device, because what it will do is it allows you to add the attack back in. So if you've really overcompressed your snare, or there's so many snare samples that have been put in there, or whatever it is, it's caused the snare to just be boof, boof, which might be nice, might be a big fat snare, you might want to add that transient back in. So before I had an SPL transient designer, I made my own one, which is this. So that's a room sound in one of my old studios, a stereo room sound, and I set the attack, so just the initial snap went through, and then, because that would have been more like a poof. But I blend that back into my snares, and it can give me a little bit of transients. Again, you don't have to have these same sounds. It's just nice to have a variety of different stuff that you can blend. And when you're doing a great mix, you may want to have different drum sounds in different sections of the song. Obviously, once a chorus comes in and it fills out, you're going to want a little bit more ambience on the snare, because all of that verb and those room tones are going to be sucked in by the additional guitars and keys, etc. And there's other snares I've got here. Here's a wood snare. I also recorded the overheads on the wood snare. This one's actually one I did. That one I actually recorded in the Boneyard. It's Joe Perry's studio. I just hit a snare in there and recorded it. I really liked the way it sounded in his studio. He's got a small room, but it's a fantastic room. The Warehouse actually was recorded in Aerosmith's studio, Pandora's Box, that Warehouse one. So those are sounds that I did going out and doing this. I like almost all of these except for Dave's, the ones I've created with on different drum kits in different places. And over the years, I've decided what I need and where I need it in the track. This one actually is one of Joey's that you can purchase. It's the Joey Kramer Rock snare. And what I did is I actually took I compressed it in a way that destroyed the attack. So it's all just the ring. Have you ever listened? So that is only the ring. And the reason for that is like I got this blend of the snares and I liked it, but I just felt like, well, now there's a little bit of a natural ring missing. Again, this looks complicated, but I'm only using bits and pieces. For me, it's like I lay all these in one go. So these are all in one group against the live snare. And you can do that using individually lining them up, tabbing to transient. You can do it using sound replacer. You can do it using Melodyne by getting the MIDI, which is what we normally do. But the reality is when you do this, you've got all of the different snares, etc. that you want to use. The great thing about, say, if you use addictive drums, is you can tune your sample snare to match your live snare. That's another kind of nice thing. So here's another one. This one's actually from Chris Sester's snare from Jet. Has that Jet snare. So that's Chris's snare sound. Chris basically took like a Ludwig Supraphonica with detune. So when he was recording in my studio, I just, went out there and hit the snare and set it up the way I wanted. Here's a fun one that I do, and I suggest sometimes that you might try, is I triggered 100 hertz, just 100 hertz here. Believe it or not, that is 100 hertz that I triggered, and I added to it just for a little boom, boom. Very straightforward. These are generic snare samples here. This is an AJ trashy one. You can find these online. Now what I do with this one is I use that, because it's got a lot of personality, I actually use that quite low, but I use, if you go to here, you'll see I'm sending that to the reverb. So I'm using that to create the ambience that you're hearing. I always take, not always, but I often take one snare sample and use that to trigger ambience, because if you use the snare top, especially if it's a really super loud drummer and he's laying into his hat and all this kind of stuff, you're also like sending tons of hat and bleed to your reverb. So I prefer to take a sample and send that to a reverb. That is something I stole from Andy Wallace. It's what Andy Wallace has been doing for years. All those great rock records like Nevermind, etc. Remix were done like that. Here's the up-close snare from the wood snare. Here is, so look at this one. Oh, this is just a generic rock snare that I created. That was a Supraphonic played on a rim. That is being sent to the ambience as well. So it's like a blend. You can see there's like 3 or 4 different snare samples that are going there. Again, I blend them. I think the secret really is, and I keep saying this, is really just to have things at your disposal. I put this in as like a package on all of my drums so that when I'm mixing, I can decide what blend I want for the circumstances. So look, if we listen to all this together, it's a great snare sound. That's just something I create. Now, you can do that these days, by using Addictive and create something similar to that, by tuning the snare. And I do that often as well. I think for me, I don't have one way of doing it, but I do like the ability to be able to have in a mix like that quickly move and go, okay, I need to bring up the ambience. So maybe I'll go to the gun snares there and push them in the choruses louder. So that to me is really kind of a secret. It's just to have a lot of variety. And the same thing here with the kick, what we've done by adding those is create the same kind of idea. Yeah, it's pretty sample based. It sounds pretty, but if you listen to the track, it works well with it. Each and every day, the scent of apricot and love, fresh cut grass and summer sun. Because the live drums don't come until the very last chorus, and I wanted that drama in this song by putting in a lot of big drums and stuff. It's still a pop song, and it's not like it's suddenly turning into Metallica at the end there, but it's definitely pushing. So there's definitely no one way to do it, but I like to have variety, and I like to be able to mix on the fly a little bit. Great. So please subscribe. Go to the email link below. and go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list, you'll get a whole bunch of free stuff. There's some behind the scenes stuff. There's the miking of drums that I did with Greg D'Angelo. You can see loads of different techniques and stuff. We also go to Sunset Sound and talk about how we do stuff there. So, and then please, of course, leave some questions below, and I try my hardest to get there and answer every question. And thanks ever so much for watching, and please feel free to ask us any questions, and thank you very much.